A man getting bit by an alligator and he screams.
Okay, quiet.
Stood out towards me.
Ow! No, not an owl. A real scream of pain.
It's the Screamies, so...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2025 Screamy Awards.
Very nice. Welcome
We
to the
invite
second
you to
annual
scream,
Screamy
sit back,
Awards.
and enjoy.
With your host, Mark
Now,
and Jason.
Here are your hosts, Brock Kingsley and Jason Wiseman.
You're going to play me off?
I was trying to. Welcome back, Screamers, to the second annual Screamies Award Show. This is taking place, of course, after the Oscars, and that is because the Screamies are the official end to the 2024 movie season.
You're all wondering who is going to win the Screamy. Like, who's going to do it? We got to wait till all of the other things are put to bed. You don't play the national championship. You don't play another bowl game after you play the national championship. You keep going.
That's right.
This is the end of the season. The Screamies are the end of the award season. Absolutely. This is one everyone's been waiting for. And boy, am I excited to get to this tonight.
The
Ooh,
Screamy is given in recognition of achievements or lack thereof in direction, performance, and should-haves that represent Wilhelm's iconoclasm and overall opinionated views during the previous year. So tonight, we invite you to scream, sit back, and enjoy. Jason.
This should get it right in under 4 hours, so don't worry about that.
That is correct. Yeah. We'll go a little bit longer than the Oscars because, of course, we have much more to talk about and much, much more to say. So I thought, Jason, we would just kind of start and jump in with our newest award, the What the Fuck Are People Watching Award.
Yeah, yeah. So how do we want to do this? I mean, obviously, I think we switch back and forth, but would you like me to go first with the what the fuck Screaming?
Sure, because I think there will be at least one consensus choice here.
Yeah, so so I just chose the one, but yeah, so mine in this one is the one that I continually go back to and have gone back to this entire year, and I know there were several for us. But to me, the winner, the hands down Screamy of this year is Hitman, Richard Linklater's Hitman. I just still to this day cannot explain why anyone found any sort of enjoyment in that film. Thought that was a good looking film, a well acted film, a well paced, well scripted, gave its actors anything to do. It was legitimately just a ridiculous piece of shit. Sorry, my computer just weirdly opened up another window. It is weirdly just a ridiculous piece of shit. And I can't for the life of me fathom why that was heralded. It ended up on some people's best of year end list. It just makes no fucking sense whatsoever.
Yeah. This was at the top of my what the fuck are people watching list as well. And that's why I thought we would come down to this kind of consensus. But I found this movie to be kind of overdone in every aspect. I thought it was overwritten. I thought it was trying to be too smart and too clever. I thought the acting was not good. I thought there was actually no chemistry between those two either. I took no kind of joy from this film. And maybe that's because I'm just bitter and like a young curmudgeon. Can you be a young curmudgeon? I mean, I know that I'm not exactly like
so. Especially
young
these days,
anymore,
right?
but like, right. You can be whatever you want these days.
We encourage it, actually. So,
right. Would it be weird if I said, "Hi, I'm Brock, and my pronouns are young curmudgeon"? That's yeah. That wasn't as neither
one
as
of those are
funny.
pronouns, but
yeah. I know that was
those are just adjectives.
that was the fucking joke.
I know.
Why?
Yeah, but I know. I've got to explain.
Why do you
it
have to?
for the people at home?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for spelling out the joke. It wasn't a good joke, but still, you could have let it just hang there. Right? But no, I did not. This movie just annoyed the shit out of me, really, and I just thought it was trying too hard, and I think that Linklater and whoever helped him write this were just a little. And I think what's his name actually helped write it, right? Didn't Powell write it?
Yeah, he definitely at least came to him with the idea.
Yeah.
Which again, the other, when I know we talked about this kind of ad nauseum on the episode where we talk about Hitman, but the other really glaring piece of this is that this is supposed to be a true story about a person who legitimately led an interesting life. And this movie essentially accuses him of murder. Like, hilarious murder that we just are all okay with because,
because of love.
Two wrongs definitely equal a right in this case.
Because of love.
And it's okay to murder bad cops, I guess. I mean, I don't know what the shit. They're now my dogs are barking, so.
This is what we get for home recording.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, we don't have a standalone purpose-built podcast studio, so
So I mean, listeners, if you want to help fund that, please send along your pennies to. We have a PO box, right? Somewhere.
Yeah. But also, they can't send along their pennies for much longer.
Well, right, but I mean, so the pennies will be useless. Just send them to us. We'll figure out a way to smelt them or something, and from that smelted copper, we'll build our own podcasting studio.
Yeah. We'll turn
the
them
world's heaviest podcasting.
We'll turn them
studio.
into pipes, and then we'll go sell those.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, so back to that point of this was a man who had an interesting life, and this is not like crazy territory. I mean, this is not like something that Linklater hasn't done in the past. I think that's what's also so disappointing about this is that this is a man who's made decent comedies, made similar films to this and made them interesting and made them fun. And this is just Netflix slop on the highest order.
Yeah.
And the fact that people and again, I could let all of that go. People make bad movies all the time. It's fine. But for everyone to jump on board this, and I get it, the two leads are ridiculously attractive. That can't distract you from this is a shitty movie.
Yeah.
The jokes fall flat. The horrific costumes that he goes through, the ludicrous premise of this film altogether and also the shitty propaganda that exists in this film, right. All of it just stacked upon one another makes this really one of the worst films I saw all of last year.
Yeah. This hands down is the winner of the what the fuck are people watching Screamy. The other one that I had listed as a nominee was Juror Number 2.
Yeah,
because I think that falls into the same, I mean, almost like exactly the same category of it looks like shit. There is nothing going on. What is going on with some of the acting and some of the directing in this film? And this is this really even a script? I mean, it seems like there's just nothing there. So, and then again, to see that made people's lists right next to Megalopolis was pretty confusing as well. But maybe I don't I guess I just don't like cinema.
You don't like film. I don't understand.
I have no joy in life, So
the only films that are worthwhile are the inscrutable ones that make you want to gouge your eyeballs out. So
right, those three films. Okay, let's keep this show moving along. I promise not to waste your time tonight. And let's jump into the next category, and that is near miss. The near miss award. Right. Oh,
it's your turn. So
okay.
yeah, we'll go back and forth.
Okay. I wonder this one. I was really thinking about movies that like almost work for me, or because I feel like I'm coming down a lot on the sides of I fucking hate this or oh my god I love this. You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel like
there's not a lot of middle ground for us. Unfortunately.
Right. And even a film like Conclave, I'm just like, it's fine, but I don't think it's like a near miss, right? So
no, there was nothing that was going to save Conclave.
Right.
I mean, like there was nothing that like could turn it around.
Well, I mean, intersex Catholics.
I mean, making
just like...
right, making it a different movie altogether. Sure, that could have turned it around.
Right. So the film that I came up with, the film that I thought, oh wow, this almost worked for me, is The Idea of You.
Okay.
The Anne Hathaway and some other guy. Oh, the guy that played the quarterback in like Bottoms. It's Jeff, right? From Bottoms. I don't know his name. I just know him as that.
I don't either.
But here's the thing. Like I'm not a huge fan of rom-coms, but this one in a weird way charmed me for about like 85% of it, right? I was really kind of on board with. I think Showalter did a good job directing it, right? I think the script was interesting, and I think I like Anne Hathaway. I think she's pretty good in everything she does, and I think this was an interesting role for her, kind of a moving into an aged movie star role. I mean, in a way,
right?
I don't
in her late 30s or whatever the fuck she is.
Right,
yeah,
right.
So clearly she's
and maybe this comes back around for another war too. But right, I mean, it's like making her older or seem older, than she really is, right, or than she really looks. But I enjoyed her presence in this film too. The last, I don't know, 10% of it, 15% just did not. It was so close. I kind of felt like it was really close, and it just didn't kind of pull it off.
No, and that's what it was so like surprising about that movie was like realizing like, fuck, do I like this? This is pretty fucking good. Like everything's charming and like the relationship kind of works.
Yeah.
And then, you fucked it up.
Yep. You completely just like dropped the ball. That was the thing. Like we're sitting there because we watched this at DIFF and at last year's Dallas International Film Festival. And I'm sitting there and I forget, I had no intention of going to this movie. Right. And you were like, I'm going to go see it. And I was like, well, I got nothing else to do. So I did. And I think there was a moment like halfway through where I'm like, why do I feel so good watching this film? What is going on? What's wrong with me? Why am I having a good time? Right. Yeah, it was shocking. It was surprising at how well that all of that came together, except that kind of last act, right? That sort of like last half of the act.
Rom-coms that are done well, I mean, like, and it's pretty rare that they're done really well. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, they do a good job of sucking you in and having that kind of like, even though you know all the beats, right? And you know that the couple's going to end up together at the end. Yeah, I bought into this couple. I mean, I bought into the relationship. I bought into the stupid, contrived, premise and the the way that the relationship was going to fall apart. You could see coming down Main Street.
Yep.
All of it worked, and then just the ending just kind of completely fucked it up. Nicholas Galitzine is that guy's name. I don't know if I'm not pronouncing his last name correctly.
Jeff from Bottoms. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Jeff from Bottoms. Yep.
Yeah, from Bottoms. My near miss was Night Bitch with Amy Adams.
Okay.
I thought it was a really interesting premise, and I just felt, and I even said like in my a review of it that I thought that it would really work for a lot of people. Like I think there's people that that this probably really would hit home and it would have a really kind of meaningful impact and like a personification and a display of a lot of things that mothers feel, especially working mothers or mothers who have kind of given up their career or whatever and have to then try to find it again. But I just felt like the whole metaphor was so on the nose, like it just was so heavy-handed.
Oh yeah.
That it just completely it fell apart for me. And I really wanted to like it. I really wanted to like in a year that seemed poised for this type of body horror and interesting, bizarre, surreal type of I don't know, that type of message film.
Well, especially like female focused too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I just felt like it was just the underlying message eventually fell back on, TV movie of the week type stuff, where it was just like, okay, we get it. It's not like at a certain point, the powerfulness of the message kind of just ran out, because they only had one point, and it was a kind of a slight one, and then driving it home for an hour and a half to hour 45 minutes, we're just like, okay, well, meh. But like I said, I can see if it worked for you, but for me, it wasn't quite there, and I really wanted it to be. I think that was the other thing too, is I really wanted it to kind of ramp up, and not necessarily into the substance level of like that type of body horror, but I think it could have gone weirder. I think it could have gone more A24, Earth Mama type, weirdness, and I think it would have served it well rather than kind of explaining itself. And it's another one of those fucking films that has a ridiculously bad voiceover that completely shits on itself. And I think that there's so many of those these days. I don't understand like where we lost that thread in screenwriting class, where we show, we don't tell. But like,
right, it
really, really was like, I was just like, ugh, this is the worst. So like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, going back to your idea about like wishing it were more weird. I wish it, and this is going to sound, kind of cheesy and on the nose, right? But I do wish it were more animalistic. I do wish it was even more kind of like brutal and visceral in that way.
Yeah.
Because it does come off as a little bit slight, right? Even though, the metaphor's heavy-handed, but then everything else about the metaphor just kind of falls so limp. Throughout the film. And this is a movie that's going to come up in another category of mine, but I'm with you in that I really wanted it to work for me, and it just didn't. And man, has Scoot McNairy ever been more annoying in a film than he was in this one? Jesus.
He's another one of those guys that is always that fucking guy.
Yep.
It's just always, and it's the same thing with what's his face, the other guy that I hate that I can't remember now his name of, but Chris
Messina. Chris Messina. And the voiceover thing, did we not learn anything from like the different cuts of Blade Runner?
I don't. It's happened so often, even like with like O Canada and stuff. It's just happened so often that like it's just I don't really get. I understand why it's done, because it's an easy, lazy way to tell a story. But like, it's so insulting, especially for a movie like Night Bitch that should be expecting a lot of its audience. That movie shouldn't be easy to watch, right? You should feel uncomfortable in your own skin. You don't need to have. And for a movie that like has like moments of joy and weirdness, like where she's singing at Weird Al and like in the car, and like there's this kind of like, I don't know, like all of it seems like it should be a much more intelligent film that just completely undermined with her explaining every emotion that she has to the camera.
Right. And voiceovers can be interesting, at least in my mind, if they kind of stand in opposition to the rest of the narrative, right? If they're doing something different, if they're commenting on something else or in a different way. But when they're just basically exposition dumps, then it's not interesting at that point. And that's what most voiceovers are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Look, if I'm wrong, you can tell me. That's fine. But
no. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And were there any other ones that were on your list that you thought were
I had
close?
I had Carnage for Christmas on my list of near miss because I think that I think that it was a little bit heavy handed, but I do think it was close. I think closer for me, I think, than it was for you. But I wanted to. I was really giving it the benefit of the doubt, and I think I really wanted to like it more than I did. And so I think that's kind of that was the other one on my list. I feel like there were others, but like I said, I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, but I think you're right. There were a lot of like we were in like two hot and cold camps for most of the year.
Yeah.
I will say there were a few that hit me, and I didn't include them just because I liked them on first pass, and then second pass they kind of lessened for me. So like things like Strange Darling doesn't take quite as an impact for second time around. But I don't think that's the film's necessarily fault. I think it's the impact of like understanding where that film is going, even though you can kind of tell where that film is going just in the first place.
Right.
My other one was a controversial one. What could be controversial, but for whatever reason, All of Us Strangers didn't kind of left me cold.
Okay.
When I saw it, I didn't dislike it. I don't know what I wanted more out of it, but when I saw it, I was just like, I don't know. There's just something here that didn't quite hit for me like I thought this film absolutely would.
Yeah. Maybe you don't find Andrew Scott as attractive as you thought you did.
maybe not. It's possible. It's definitely possible.
Okay. This next category is an interesting one. It's the most underrated Screamy award. So what makes your list of most underrated? And how do we define underrated, Jason?
Well, for me, it's going to be things that I felt like should have gotten more notoriety and seemingly didn't. And I had two that kind of stood out to me. But the one for me that I thought really, like in a year of like everyone championing Better Man and all these other like, I don't know, but seemingly kind of lesser films, to be quite honest. Like to me, I don't understand the lack of love for Kneecap. It was one of my favorite films of the year, and I think like it was so impressive. Like I said, if this had been set in '85 and this was about the Beastie Boys, I think we would have all gone ape shit over it. Yeah. Not to put another Better Man reference into this, but I really thought that the way that this story was told, the story that it was telling, the three leads were ridiculously compelling. It was so frenetic, so much fun. I mean, yes, I know it's pseudo kind of glorifying drug use, but I mean, I don't necessarily know if glorifying is the right word, that you would say that we used to glorify drug use in all kinds of films throughout the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But I really felt like this,
we still do. We still do. Just let's just say that, right? I mean, yeah.
But I felt like this should have been a film that somehow made its way above. I know it's about Irish rappers, rapping, in Irish, but I do think that I don't know. I think that story really, really works well, and I think those guys are so charismatic, and that the way that this was filmed and shot, the fact that it is a true story told this way in a world of ridiculously mundane biopics, so that we have one that's actually interesting, and no one talks about it at the end of the year at all. Like it gets a little bit of bump, but like I don't know. This to me, I really felt like this should have gotten a lot more award push and a lot more recognition than what it ended up doing.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I find it strange what garners attention and what doesn't. And even if Kneecap didn't get award consideration, the fact that like it just disappeared from the zeitgeist or conversation, I find really strange. Right? It played the festival circuit and it did well at the festival circuit, at least in terms of like critical, I think assessment. But yeah, it's just no one was talking about it at all. Not even in like casual conversation.
Right.
So what we're seeing is, well, no, I was going to make a joke about like, Irish racism, but I think Blazing Saddles already did that. Did that joke.
Right.
We don't want the Irish. So my most underrated was Problemista, because this is another film that I
Jesus
think,
Christ, yeah.
right, that you watch this film, and for me, it has all the hallmarks of things that people would want to praise, right? It's quirky in that A24 way, but it's also dealing with, I think, prevalent and relevant kind of subject matter, right? For not just a certain kind of generation, but like for all of us. And Tilda Swinton is brilliant, right? I mean, I think the whole it is such a good film that just completely got swept under the rug. And I know we've talked before about A24 like dropping the ball on publicizing this film, but I mean, I just think I think it's a really good movie, and it's one that no one was talking about, and
yeah, I don't understand why they didn't just run with it as the next. I know it's not the same type of film, and it's not quite as frenetic, and it's not quite as like it doesn't quite have the same visual flair. But why aren't you like pushing this as the next Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah.
And then like if you had have released this, during the election cycle, this film is extremely prescient. I mean, like it's just like this will confound me forever that I cannot believe that they took such a wonderful film and did nothing with it. Like they had such a gold mine on their hands, and they killed it. I mean, they just absolutely killed it. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. Yeah. Out of all the things that they've done well, like this, that you could have ushered in a new star. You could have, I mean, you had enough star power behind it that you could have set, the path. I forget the gentleman's name now because I didn't have it right up in front of me. But
Julio Torres.
Yeah, and he could have been, writing his own deals. He could have been the next, Key Juan, from a perspective of like, him booking things like Love Hurts and then being the voice in something I forget what he was the voice of. But I mean, it's crazy. I saw this at Oak Cliff like 2 years ago,
right,
and was just like, this is incredible, and was just waiting for it to come out. And this and Earth Mama, I really truly believe they dropped the ball on both of those films.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's nuts to me. Like, you don't have that many films. Why are you wasting? Why are you hiding these films? Like, I just don't get it. And especially in a year that was desperate in need of actual good films. And I still contend that this was a shit year for films.
I'm with you. That was the other thing. I was looking back as I was quote unquote prepping for this award show. I was going back through the list, and I'm just like,
10 minutes ago.
15? No, I've been working on this since. No. As I was going back looking at the list of films, I'm just like, this is not been a great year. And I think that's also a testament to why we're like hot and cold on everything. Right. I mean, I think that's really why we're like, I fucking hate this, and I love this. I feel like there's just no in between.
Yeah, I mean, and the amount of, and I think this has been like, I don't know what year we have to go back to say that this is, from an Oscars perspective, this is like the least amount of films that's been nominated. Yeah. I think you look at this like slate of films, and like I would, they got nominated for Best Picture. I don't know, man. Yeah, it's been a rough year. And if something like Emilia Perez gets 13 nominations, it's a rough year for film.
What other films did you have?
It's an El Mal film. It's a year film. El Mal Año for,
which is why I was dancing on
for películas.
Tables. And
apologies to all of our Hispanic listeners and Spanish-speaking listeners.
Jesus Christ, right? I know. Hey, that's
Carla
Gascon
me.
That's more of an apology than I think most of the representatives of that film gave. So.
Then Zoe Saldana gave after the Oscars.
After the fact. Oh shit, I should apologize. So I'm like really sorry. I'm really sorry if you guys were offended. Now that I've won my Oscar.
I like her message. Just like, yeah, we didn't really mean it that way. And if you think that, well, too bad, tough titty, because I got my award, so it's fine.
Isn't that I'm not calling Zoe Saldana racist, but I feel like that is always the kind of like message from racist, right? Like, I didn't mean it that way. And if you took it that way, that's a you problem, right? I mean, like, I know that, like, we're not supposed to say that word, but that's not really what I meant.
I will say, to their defense, although I think there should have been Netflix should have had a publicist with like, okay, here's the question you're going to get asked, here's your answer. Here's the question you're going to get asked, here's your answer. And let's get past this, and let's all forget Amelia Perez exists. And you guys can take that, and it'll be Academy Award winner Zoe Saldana on any of the things you do from here on out. But like, we don't need to remember why.
Yeah, right.
You know, it had to have been like extremely tense to win awards and have to go up and like then speak to a film that is almost universally hated outside of critic circles that are in the Academy and evidently in the Hollywood foreign press. Yeah. Which again, I do think that like I do think that kind of exposes a little bit about how these awards are actually, how these films are actually nominated. And I think it came out today that like Neon spent $18 million to get a Nora nominated for all of these things and its Oscar campaign and awards push. Yeah. You know, obviously I don't care, right? It's all, at the end of the day, you know, they don't mean anything. You like what you like. Right. You know, if people remember what they remember, it doesn't really move the needle, especially not now anymore. Like, I mean, and you know, these films may come back to the theaters for a minute. And people may be interested. Like, it may move a few more Criterion Blu-rays. But ultimately, I don't think it doesn't matter the way it used to. Have you heard like the uproar that people get into when talking about Oscar campaigns and like fraudulent Oscar campaigns and like trying to rig the system and like, you know, influence votes? It's fucking ridiculous. But also like this conversation, I don't know how you feel about like category fraud or whatever, but like I do not give a shit. Like, I don't care. I don't care that Kieran Culkin won for supporting actor when, well, actually he was, you know, they were both leads. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I do not care. Right. Like none of that matters to me. I don't know. No. Yeah. No, I mean, like, yeah, no, I don't care. Because again, it doesn't really, I mean, it's all just fodder for discussion, right? I mean, I don't like, it doesn't really.
Well, aren't we as two white guys with a podcast, aren't we supposed to care about content, Jason?
Probably so. Probably should care more.
But we're like, no,
but I mean, like when something like Shakespeare in Love wins Best Picture because it was bought, I mean, like, I think, you know, we can kind of, this is the WWE for wrestling. I mean, for movie nerds, right? I mean, this is not real.
No,
it doesn't. Anora is not the quote unquote best picture because art is subjective. I mean, and so it's ridiculous to think that it means anything. It's not like we made all the movies line up on a starting line and then run towards whatever the best finish line is, and Anora crossed it first.
Which actually, I think that would probably happen.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. We should bring back like Battle of the Hollywood Stars. If out of anything out of all of this, we should make the stars of Honora fight the people like to battle the stars of Conclave and you know Amelia Perez and right there. That's how we should determine whether or not movies are the best.
I like that idea.
If we do them some sort of like random like kind of pseudo Olympics. And make all these people like really try to do some sort of like feat of, it doesn't have to be Olympics. They can be like the Billy Madison, you know, decathlon type thing where some of them are like, we need to do chemistry problems. And then other times we need to do high hurdles. Right.
A Lego building competition. Before we before we move on to the next category, did you have any other films in the most underrated, like any other kind of like runner up or nominees, I guess I should say? That's the official award language.
I thought Lisa Frankenstein should have been much more beloved than what it was. You don't like Lisa Frankenstein? I thought it was fun.
I thought it was fine. I thought it was fun, but I didn't think it was underrated. Okay. That's no. That's fine. That's okay. That's again. This is subjective. However wrong your opinions might be, it's still subjective. No, I'm kidding. No, I enjoyed it, but I didn't fully. It didn't fully work for me, so I didn't think that it fell into this category. I think I wanted it to be a little more. I don't know what I wanted it to be. I think there were maybe that's the problem. Maybe the tone didn't quite hit with me or like connect with me. Again, I hate life, so I'm miserable.
No. That's fine. I think it kind of fell into that wheelhouse of like I thought it was. It felt like it should have been. And again, it was Bottoms like heralded or and not that it was as funny as Bottoms or as good as Bottoms, but I felt like it had all the elements that it was one of those films that deserved better than it got when we see other much lesser films in that kind of same genre kind of rise above it.
Okay, I think that's 100% fair. Yeah, I do agree with that. Any other ones on your list on the nominee?
Nah, not really.
I had like a whole slew.
Oh, okay. All right.
I had so also on this list was Love Lies Bleeding, Housekeeping for Beginners, Last Stop in Yuma County, and Janet Planet.
I definitely agree with you on all of those. Although I think Last Stop in Yuma County is one that I think that's going to be a film that people are going to continue to discover and go, holy shit, how did this fall under the fall between the cracks, because it really is fun and violent and just I don't know, in all the best ways. This would have been back in the Tarantino era of direct-to-video stuff, this would have been something that people would have talked about ad nauseum. But I really think that one is a shame that it didn't get more press and more publicity, because it really is such a fun film.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That I think it will. I think too that it will continue to kind of be talked about. Kind of, it's one that's just going to be passed on and passed on. Like if we still had VHS copies of stuff, that's one that you would give to a buddy, right? And just here, watch this, just kind of so. But yeah.
And in a year of things like Strange Darling and Late Night with the Devil and these types of kind of similar films in the similar vein, it feels weird that Last Stop at Yuma County gets left out of that mix.
Yeah, it does. Anyway, Jim Cummins, you never can tell. Right? No, I'm kidding. I like him so much, and I like his movies so much. I don't know. I have an affinity for that guy. Anyway. Okay. This category is always fun but tricky, and it would be a better film if directed by Elaine May or John Cassavetes Award.
So I did one for each of these folks. I don't know if you did as well.
I did, yes. I did
so we can split this category up for future Screamies where it's just Elaine May and John Cassavetes. I think that's fair.
Well, okay. So I don't know. I kind of like it that we're this would anyway. Do you start or do I start? I forget. Where did we leave off?
I'll go because I don't remember either.
Okay.
So the better if directed by Elaine May, I went with Jason Reitman's Saturday Night.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought about Real Pain, and I thought, well, Real Pain's pretty good as is. I do think that she would make that film funnier, but I think her lingering camera would really, really work well with. And I really like Saturday Night actually. But I think as a fan of Saturday Night Live, I think I was kind of predisposed to like Saturday Night. But I do think Elaine May having that kind of background, and I know her films weren't huge ensemble pieces, but she also worked in huge ensemble pieces. And I think that I think her comedic sensibilities could have ratcheted up the comedy of that film rather than just being kind of a sort of a pseudo documentary about the opening night of Saturday Night. I think she would have done really amazing things with that.
Interesting.
And of course, it would have been 3 hours long.
Right.
But I think I want that entire thing to be 3 hours long.
Okay. I have okay, here's what I have. I have two for Cassavetes, one for Elaine May, and one for both.
Okay.
But really, so I think, and again, this is a film that I've already mentioned, but I would be curious to see, or I think it'd be a better film if Elaine May directed The Idea of You. I think she would have nailed the ending, right? And so I'm thinking in terms of one, Heartbreak Kid and A New Leaf, right? And how those two movies could fit so well with this story, and how the endings of those two movies are in different ways Well, the ending of Heartbreak Kid is just fucking kind of devastating, right? To see him sitting there just like, oh shit. and I think she could have brought something else to the end of this, to the end of the idea of you that was lacking. And I think she's funny, right? I think she's hilarious, and I think the jokes would have been edgier, if she had done it. So
imagine Elaine May in an era where you could focus your films on female characters.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And that will lead me to the other one. But go ahead. All right, what other ones?
Oh, so Better If Directed by Cassavetes. My film is Baby Girl.
Oh, okay.
Which I found Baby Girl to be boring. Mostly.
Yeah.
And I know that Cassavetes is not necessarily known for, really like sexually explicit. I think he would have taken what the sexually explicit portion of that and really kind of turned it on its ear and made it interesting, right? Rather than making it some sort of like pseudo intellectual 50 Shades of Grey, making it like really about the inner work. Can you imagine Gina Rowlands in that role? I mean, young Gina Rowlands in that role.
It's like if we actually saw the action in faces.
Right. It's and whomever you would put in as a young as the one who's kind of the person that's kind of bringing out
Hunter
her...
Dickinson. Yeah. So what you're saying is Seymour Castle.
Yes. Although I need a slightly younger Seymour Castle, but yes.
But the Seymour Castle from Faces, but with the mustache from Minnie and Mousekewitz.
Right. And Timothy Carey as the dog.
Absolutely.
But I think that's what that film ultimately was lacking was this needs to be like just something different. This needs to be more psychosexual than it is just kind of silly sexual, I guess. I don't know. Like that movie, and I think my expectations were way different when I went into that film thinking that it was going to be something different. But I don't know. I didn't feel like, and I don't think we've talked about it on this podcast, but I just never felt like anything that was happening was really overly believable. Like her character as a CEO goes through so many different like ranges and like, and at certain points absolutely understands who she is, even with her own sexual kinks, and then at later on completely loses track of those and focus of those when she's confronted with a young man who wants to who can dominate her. I don't know. I think that interplay between humanity, like between those two characters, would have worked much better with Cassavetes at the helm. It would have been way more confounding. It would have left us with a dual ending, whether we weren't really sure if that was the actual ending or not. But I think it would have been a much better film.
Yeah. Okay. So for my Cassavetes helmed film, I have two here. Which one do I want to do? I'm gonna pick.
Let me decide.
I'm gonna pick O Canada. I think that if Cassavetes directed that film, I don't think we'd have the issues with it that we did. And I think again, I think the film that gives me confidence that he could do this is a film like Love Streams, right? Where we see this kind of, a similar kind of character that Cassavetes plays, this kind of, playwright, this kind of celebrity working in LA, right? Who's a kind of legend in his own mind, but really just like not at all. And he's falling apart and he's dying and, looks terrible and everything. And I think that he would bring a different sensibility to that Gear character that we didn't quite get, right, in Schrader's version. And again, I think those long takes, I think Cassavetes would just let the camera roll and just keep going, right, until something broke within that. So, yeah, and I don't think we'd have that stupid fucking voiceover.
Right, and he definitely wouldn't have concluded the son because he wouldn't have had any interest in any sort of kid story whatsoever.
Right. And I mean, I think, and I'd be really interested to see like how he would have done, or if he would have done any kind of like the flashback stuff.
Right.
You know, I think he would have been much more focused on this guy really kind of deconstructing himself, and taking that to its kind of full extreme, which I don't think we got, but is what I wanted.
Right.
So, yeah. Any others that you thought of?
I toyed around with Joker 2 for Cassavetes as well.
Okay,
I thought, because I think that breakdown of mental, you know, that's like if you take you take a woman under the influence kind of approach to Joker 2, I think he could have, and also, you know, A Child Is Waiting, even to a certain extent. Like, I mean, like, you know, I think he could have made that a little less, whatever it ended up being.
Right.
I don't know how he would have done with the musical aspects of it all, but I do think if you had like taken a Joker 2 and put it in the world of Killing of a Chinese Bookie, that's a much more interesting film than what we ended up getting.
So as you say that about Bookie, I was thinking also of Juror Number 2.
And that one came up to me as well.
Okay, yeah.
It was such a boring fucking movie that I was like, I don't want to see anybody else do that one again.
But I could see, like, you could, I mean, take a film like Bookie and how Cassavetes just follows Cosmo around, right? And like through everything he does, and I think that'd be an interesting thing to follow Nicholas Hoult around. It'd be interesting to see Cassavetes follow that character that Nicholas Hoult plays, just kind of follow him around and deal with that psychological kind of torment, right, as it comes up. And then the other film, I think it'd be really interesting to see Elaine May direct Night Bitch. Right? I think that was the other one that I was like, wow, if she did this. Actually, I had that down for either of them. I was like, this would be a great movie for either May or Cassavetes in different ways. I mean, you know, the one of the things that, you know, and listeners will know on this podcast that we love Elaine May, but one of the things I think that I love about her is how she can direct a film like Heartbreak Kid and also direct a film like Mikey and Nikki, right? A film that shows the kind of darker side, a more violent side, a more kind of, you know, a film of betrayal, a film of quote unquote friendship gone bad, right? And I think that sensibility would play well with a film like Night Bitch and what we didn't get with it.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Right, I think
as you should.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
No, I think our favorite category is coming up.
That's right.
And I've actually retitled this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, please.
To Imagine Me and Pew, the film that would be much better with Florence Pugh in the lead.
I love it. Love it. Well, yes. Oh, that's good.
And I'll turn this one over to you for your Pew change.
Yes. So I have several listed, but the first one,
like all of them, right? I mean, it's just like
I know.
Captain
Well, that's
America:
the thing,
Brave New World, which didn't come out this year, but last year, but whatever.
All of
Still.
them. The first one I have down though is The Brutalist. I think that if she were in, what is her name? The role of the wife. What is her name?
It's so. She was nominated for an Oscar, and she's so boring that we both forgot.
Felicity Jones. Felicity Jones.
Yeah.
She does nothing for me. She does absolutely nothing for me in this film, and frankly, she doesn't do much for me in anything that she's in. I always think she's just kind of fine, but also I think she's completely forgettable.
She's the Eddie Redmayne of female actors.
Oh God, I wasn't gonna go with that. Man, that's just mean.
Sorry, Felicity. You're welcome to come on the podcast and defend yourself. And I know you.
Wow.
Why would you ever do that?
But she was in,
because don't and it's just to talk. You don't need to defend yourself. That's fine.
No, just to be like
you're
you
an
guys,
Oscar-nominated actress.
right.
What do we know?
Well, we don't know anything. as listeners of this podcast can attest to, we know absolutely nothing. But even in the Rogue One Star Wars movie, she's just forgettable to me. She doesn't move the needle on my viewing experience. And so, you know, replace her with Florence Pugh, and I feel like those scenes get even fierier um, more intense, more, I don't know, more heavy. So
Mine was, and hold on to your hats, kids. Mine was Challengers.
I thought about that one too. Yeah. Dude, you know it would be so much hotter if she were in that role.
I would believe her as a manipulator.
Yes.
I would believe her as a tennis player. With all due respect to Zendaya, I think she was woefully miscast in that role.
Yeah.
And I think someone like Pugh, who has that kind of same vulnerability, that I think that role was missing in a lot of senses. This idea that Zendaya is this master manipulator and with no sense of humanity or empathy or again, and I don't want to get into it with challengers, defenders. I get it, but I would way more believe Pugh in that role, and I would also believe that again, like you ramp up that intensity, that sexuality. This does become probably the sexiest film of the year kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. She would bring something. She would bring a way more depth to that character than I actually think that it needed. Not than I actually think, but that it needed. Than Zendaya could in this case. And I just thought, I mean, we talked about this again ad nauseum, but I just think she was horrifically wrong for that role.
Yeah. Have you seen We Live in Time?
I have not.
Okay,
yet, no.
Don't. Just don't.
Well, that's the other thing about Pugh, right? Is she's got terrible choice in movies most of the time.
Well, I feel like she does so many of these things like as a favor for people. It's so strange. Like the Zach Braff movie. Which, I mean, again,
she was,
like, but that's what I mean. Like, oh, my boyfriend's making a movie. Okay, sure, I'll be in it, sweetie. I mean, who wouldn't want to be her boyfriend? But
I'd make movies too if that was
if
how that was
like
all
a
going to
prerequisite
line up, right?
to yes. But it's just, it's not good, and it's not her fault. Right. It's
the only thing that's keeping me from making movies, by the way.
Is that you're not Florence Pugh's boyfriend?
There's just no chance that's going to happen. So there's no incentive.
Then why
for
would
me
I do
to
it? Right. Why would I do it? A couple other movies that I had picked that I thought would just be fun, and there's nothing that I find terribly wrong about the actresses who are in these roles, but I was just imagining what she would do with that role. And those films are The First Omen and Immaculate.
Yeah, I thought about those too, and I do think, that I think she brings. I mean, obviously, you're talking about an upgrade, regardless of and no offense to the actresses that were in those roles, but I mean, I think you're talking about an upgrade, especially in Sydney Sweeney's part. But I mean, there's there's an edginess to her that Sweeney may get to at some point. She's just not there in her career yet, and I don't know if that role asked her to be that way. But I agree with you that would have been interesting too. I think again, you take those to be interesting potential Cassavetes films as well, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, and I mean, just think about I think to the presence that Cassavetes had in like Rosemary's Baby, and how he could also, create a film like that.
The other one I had was Megalopolis, and putting her in Wow Platinum's Aubrey Plaza's role. I don't think that saves that film, but I do think that makes it a lot more interesting from a perspective of this. I think Aubrey Plaza was woefully miscast in that film.
I do too. I feel like she was being asked to do all the things she's not good at, right?
Yeah, it played to her worst sensibilities, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like April Ludgate being in a huge $120 million film. And I think Aubrey Plaza is better than I think you can see that with My Old Ass. She's a better actress than everyone who's in that movie.
Was it Safety Not Guaranteed? Was she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody in that movie, aside from Shia LaBeouf, was woefully miscast.
Yeah. He knew exactly the movie he was in, didn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
We needed. Yeah. I won't say this very often, but we needed 20 more Shia LaBeoufs.
Yep.
That would have made Megalopolis a lot better.
I hope you never say that again, to be honest. Okay. Well, now is the time where we do a song and dance routine on the program. Because this next category should make people, I don't know, rise from their seats. I don't know. I was trying to find out. Yeah, you see where I was going there?
So have we come to a consensus? Because last year we were kind of off base.
No, I messed it up, and it's the Porn Parody Titles Award, right?
Right.
Yeah, see, I was thinking of like, oh, what if you took this movie, the plot of it, and turned it into a porn film? And you're like, no, it's the titles. And I'm like, I think mine is more interesting but harder to explain.
It is, and it takes more work. And I like mine a lot easier. I like mine better just because it's funnier. But
I was like, but what if aliens came down and there was like a orgy with aliens? And you're just like, no, that's not what we're doing. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Like, but that's how that movie would work, and that would be interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so what's your first one?
Okay, so, well, I had quite a few, as you might imagine, and also there were already ones that already had porn titles.
I know. Isn't that kind of amazing?
Right.
I have one of those on my list.
Okay. So the ones that could already be porn titles: Red One, Hot Frosty, Daddy's Head, and of course the most obvious one, Hundreds of Beavers.
Yeah. Also, Dirty Angels.
Yes, yeah. And there's one called, and I don't know if I won't even want to say it. It got released like right around Christmas on Shudder, but it's I'm sorry.
Do it.
Bloody Axe Wound.
Yes. Nice.
So here were my runners up, and I'll give you my winner.
Okay.
Harold and the Purple Dildo was one.
Okay.
And this is a remake of original 1980s porno. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Giving Me Head. Instead of Immaculate Ejaculate, instead of Nora Areola, My Old Ass, In My Old Ass, and then but my winner, and I think it kind of had to have been, is Megacocculus.
Nice.
Which.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like that. Megacocculus. All right. So I just have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5. So we'll call these all like my 5 nominees, right? And I have one title that stays the same, and that is The Substance. So that one. The People's Poker. I just feel so ridiculous saying this, but Poon Part 2.
Poon on Poon Part 2 almost made my list. I'm disappointed. There's not going to be. We're limited on the number of Poon movies that are going to be released from here on out.
God, we are such juveniles. Christmas Eve in Miller's Pants. It's not even that funny. And Boink Twice. for Boink
nice.
Twice. Yeah. Oh, man. I don't know why the Christmas Eve in Miller's Pants gets me so much, but I think I think that's really funny. Yeah. Okay. We are children, but that's fine.
I was laughing. I'm surprised I got through mine without laughing. I think because I rapid fired them. But Don't Tell Mom the babysitter's giving me head.
I like that you framed it as a
quite
remake too. I mean, this is a remake of a 1980s porn. Same title, just recast.
Right.
Oh, see, we were on the same page this year.
Excellent. Moving forward, there'll be no problems whatsoever.
Sorry, Marcy.
All right, so on to our namesake award,
That's right.
the Pretty Girls Don't Wear Glasses. My winner of the Screamy for this was Glenn Powell in Hitman.
Yeah. I think that's the obvious
putting him in jorts and at a single seat breakfast table. definitely made him less attractive, and you know, and in every possible way, making him a computer, you know, a guy who tinkers with computers
and teaches philosophy.
Obviously, and teaches high school English. You know, clearly that means that he is poor and not sex worthy.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my winner too, but since you said it, I was trying to think of something else.
This is a hard category. We've kind of painted ourselves into a category, a corner with this one. We painted ourselves into a category with this one, literally, not literally because we didn't paint anything, but still, you get the point.
Literally
yes,
and figuratively, we are stuck with this category. Yeah, I mean, I think the other one could be like, you know, Anne Hathaway in the idea of you know, because of course Anne Hathaway's so old now, and she looks frumpy in a one-piece bathing suit. I'm like, and then we'll kind of paint her in the next scene as super sexy and hot. So I think it's
right.
Yeah, I think it's a little weird there. Did you want to be on camera?
She did. She popped up there for a minute.
I know. She loves to look at herself. So yeah, Glenn Powell and Anne Hathaway, I think, are worthy winners of that award.
It's funny because this you know, this trope has become so ingrained that like you almost forget that it exists for the most part, and it's also you don't really see it much anymore, in regards to like just being blatantly overt, like she's all that or something like that. You don't really see this type of you know, where it's called out to that extent, but it's still these ideas that I think, you know, Amy Adams and Night Bitch could be one of them as well. Like, I mean, you know, putting her as a woman who's just given birth, like now she's horrid and, you know, ridiculously hideous and actually a dog in this movie. But yeah, but again, like I said, I don't necessarily know if this category has legs in future Screamies. This may be an Olympic event that we phase out after a while.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Well, then let's move on to best performance.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking of this as best overall performance by a man or a woman or non-gender identifying person.
Sure.
So I don't really have like a clear-cut winner, and I don't know how you feel, but there weren't a ton of performances that really floored me this year.
Yeah, nothing that was like I just felt like. I mean, the one that I chose, I felt was probably the most difficult to pull off. But I would say, I agree with you that there's nothing that's been like that just jumped out at me. Even with Mikey Madison and Honora, which I think was a worthy performance. But like I said, I don't think it was groundbreaking in any sense, in any way, right? I mean, it's not something that hasn't been done before. And so, I agree with you.
Yeah. So I mean, I had. My list was Mikey Madison, Demi Moore, Sophie Thatcher, Kieran Culkin, and then like the one that, well, I mean, aside from Sophie Thatcher, the one that wasn't really on anyone's awards radar was Sebastian Stan for A Different Man. I think have you seen that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he's really good in that because he's playing like complete opposite of Sebastian Stan, right? This like sweaty, nervous, incredibly hot, but still plays ugly, you know? And just has no confidence whatsoever. So I do think that is a good, I like that performance a lot. And so like they can all tie. I mean, I don't really,
sure.
I mean, I really do like Sophie Thatcher's performance in Companion. I don't think it's one of the best, but I do really like it, and I think that she's showing more and more acting chops.
Agreed. Do you think we're gonna sleep on Sebastian Stan? I think he'll continue to get roles, but do you think people really think of him as an accomplished actor, or do they think of him as the guy in the Marvel movies?
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. Because I think he's probably one of the better actors who's in those Marvel movies, right? Him and Downey Jr. I mean, who are the other like actors? in those.
I mean Ruffalo, but I mean Ruffalo doesn't have a lot to do in those movies, right?
Right. Yeah, Ruffalo's the other one.
And then you
but no one.
you
I don't
pepper
think
people in.
I don't think Ruffalo's gotten the same kind of label as the others. Like Chris Evans can't do anything else except Captain America now. I mean, no one buys him as anything but that, right? And
yeah, he's almost like fallen into, not that, I mean, I think he's a much more talented actor than Ryan Reynolds, but he's kind of fallen into that same sort of like quick-witted, smarmy, good-looking guy kind of thing. Not to the, I mean, that's all Reynolds ever had. I mean, ever. That's but yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, like, but trying to buy Evans in like a dramatic role at this point is hard to do when he does, when he does those that movie, whatever he did with one of those little blonde-haired kids. I forget which. He did a movie after I forget. This is a really this is a good podcast. He did do the title, but like
he did do Knives Out.
They were in a truck. What's that?
He did do Knives Out.
Yeah, he did Knives Out, but he wasn't anything more than like Johnny Torch in that one too, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't know the one you're talking about of people in a truck.
It's not Johnny Torch.
But I do think I do think that we are sleeping on Sebastian Stan. I think because of that, because he's been at least somewhat lumped in with the Marvel stuff. But I haven't seen The Apprentice because I don't fucking want to deal with. I mean, I'm seeing like that face more than I want to.
It's
but
too real.
Yeah, exactly. But seeing the trailers and seeing the clips, you can already tell like what he's doing in that film, and was whether he deserved to be nominated for that or this one, I mean, doesn't matter. But I really thought he was good in this, and I think that he has much more dramatic chops than a lot of those other Marvel actors. So hopefully he can kind of get out of all that and,
Yeah, get his bag and then go off and do. But what I worry is that like he ends up like Ruffalo, where like he gets his bag and then doesn't do anything else interesting. I mean, like Ruffalo, what has Ruffalo done? Like he was legit like up and coming, like not up and coming necessarily because he was already here, but like he was doing really interesting work, and then gets the Bruce Banner role, and I mean it's just kind of
right. What has he done since then? When was Spotlight? Because he was in that, right?
Yeah, that and Foxcatcher and things like that. But I mean, I think those were before the Marvel stuff.
Foxcatcher was for sure. I guess Spotlight was too.
I don't know. I think so, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go back.
And then the Dark Water movie, the kind of environmental where he's a lawyer.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that one.
Well, I think most people did. Kind of, I guess that goes to your point about Ruffalo.
My overall performance was Léa Seydoux in The Beast.
Oh fuck! I didn't even think about that.
I think that's such a hard role to pull. I'm surprised. I understand why, because The Beast doesn't really exist as a film for most people. I also think that this was an interesting year for films like that to kind of get swept under and then really just forgotten. There's a few of them that I think, they again, you talk about what the Oscars actually should be about. And I think like we should, not that you have to reserve certain ones, and I understand that, it's hard to see all of them and it's also hard to pay for all of them, but there were certain indie films that just really, really deserved more recognition and then just didn't go anywhere. I know The Beast is a complicated film and it's not exactly the most accessible film, but I think what she did with that role was pretty amazing to be able to kind of, go across timelines and go across, different mental states. I thought she was brilliant in that. Yeah. And like of all the roles like that, like you said, they all kind of blend together, and there's a lot of them that are good, but nothing that was really outstanding. I think hers, to me, and that movie really kind of rose above, and it was really the only one that really rose above that was memorable for me this year. It was like, wow, how did she really pull that off? Because that was really, really impressive.
Yeah, your answer is so much more interesting than mine.
It happens, and we go back and forth.
I know. I know.
We're here to lift each other up.
That's right. That's right.
We're the wind beneath each other's wings.
That's right. That's right. That's right. A rising pod lifts all. I don't know. I don't know what I was going with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's talk about our, I guess, top 5 films of the year to wrap up this.
Oh, do we not want to do repertory and first
Oh
viewing?
shit!
Did you
I'm
do those?
sorry. I did. I skipped over that, didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah. We missed those two.
So this category, the Screamy Award, goes to the best rep screening or first watch. What did you have?
I did one for each, and that's okay if you didn't. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for your permission.
Right. We're figuring out the Screamies. I figure, year 1 and year 2 of the Oscars didn't go swimmingly
That's right.
either. So
That's
just to be out there.
That's
just
right.
to be clear.
Right, and also to be clear, John Wayne is waiting in the wings, waiting to kick my ass. So there's that happening as well.
Right, just stewing. He's so pissed at your answers.
Yep.
Not just because you're indigenous, but my best repertory viewing, I had a chance to see Back to the Future in 35 millimeter this year, and there's something about that movie, seeing it on the big screen and really seeing how tight and just how quickly it moves, and how, how we talked about how a good rom-com will suck you in. There's certain blockbusters that will, I think, stand the test of time. And there's things like Die Hard and this film, and even though I don't think we go back to it as much, but like E.T. and these really heavy hitters that were huge for everyone. Jaws is another one that just kind of there's no dead weight, and these are just like masters at the top of their game. And Zemeckis here, it's the story of the movie is obviously crazy with the whole Eric Stoltz piece of it and them going to reshoot of it. But if you just watching it on 35 millimeter, you realize how quickly the beats, all the beats in your head, because you remember the movie, you've seen it 100 different times, but just watching it on the big screen and seeing all of the beats play out and seeing how quickly you get back to 1955. I mean, and how all the story plays out, and I don't know, it was really, really. As much as I've memorized that film, and again, seeing it on the big screen, I think just really kind of really showcases how a near perfect film that movie actually is.
Yeah, I love that movie. And you're right, it is Zemeckis at the top of his game, and I don't know if I've ever. How do you feel about Zemeckis overall?
That's another guy who I feel like there's directors fall into sometimes this weird rabbit hole where you get Lucas in this ILM piece where he's way more focused on the special effects and what he can do and what he can showcase than actual storytelling, and he probably, and you go back and it really kind of highlights his weaknesses. I think Zemeckis was that same way with that motion capture stuff that just really kind of he got so fixated on the motion capture piece of making those movies, and it was so fixated on progressing that technology that I don't know, I think there's movies of his that I think are, like I said, Back to the Future. I think Roger Rabbit is a damn near perfect film. That probably when I was in high school was I was so blown away by that the first time I saw it. I mean, as a just as a movie lover, but as a movie nerd and a cartoon nerd, seeing all that to come together like that, it was all of those properties on screen and then pulled off so well, so funny, so scary. So there are films of his that are just upper echelon best films of all time, and then you dive into people forget that he did what was the he did Polar Express, and then he did what are the other ones? Shit. What was the one with the
mocap ones?
Yeah.
Well, he did Beowulf.
He did the Beowulf is the one I'm trying to think of. Beowulf and Christmas Carol, and it just kind of derails from there, and then from there he never really kind of recovers, right? I mean, no. And so it's disappointing. I mean, I think it's hard to find blockbuster directors who can continue to do it for a long time, that don't kind of delve into import pieces like Spielberg does, and then kind of again can't get out of his own way in a lot of senses. And and then when he tries to go back to do like, there's certain he'll hit occasionally, like Catch Me If You Can or things like. I mean, like, but for the most part, all of the big movies he tries to do, not for the most part, but like some of the big movies he tries to do, like the BFG, or like War Horse, and these things that just don't, they just kind of like fall to the wayside. And even not Capturing the Freedmans. What was the one he just did? What was it called? What was the one we did about his own life story?
Oh, fuck.
It's not Capturing the Freedmans. That's a documentary about a guy who molests kids while he's teaching them how to do computers, or allegedly molests kids.
Wow.
It's a good movie. You should see it.
The Feldmans.
Feldmans. Yes.
That's not right. That's not right.
It's not. God damn it. This is embarrassing. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Zemeckis. Is I think that what.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna type. No. What the fuck is that stupid movie called? I mean, it was fine. It wasn't great. It just wasn't. The
Fablemans. I was
Fablemans.
Close. The Fablemans.
Thank you.
I was close.
The Feldmans. Introducing the Feldmans. Wait.
That should be a new Screamy award too. Okay. So my best rep screening, and I was trying to like go back and think of like, and I do have a first watch as well. So I just remembered, but I went with The Conversation. Seeing the 4K restoration of The Conversation on the big screen. I mean, in a packed theater as well to the screening that I went. But that film, I mean, just to hear all of the nuanced sound in that movie.
Where did you see it?
The Alamo.
Okay. I was worried you were going to say Texas, and the Texas has such shit sound that it's hard. Like, it would have depending on where you sat, it would have been washed out.
Right. No. It sounded pretty good. And just to see Hackman in that role, and I think I had to get my seat was like in the front row because that's like all that was left, and so I got to just like stare up at Hackman looking like he always does, around like 49, 50 years old all the time. Every film he's ever been in. But I love that movie. And this, of course, it was after Megalopolis came out. And so to see Coppola be able to do something that's actually good, right, and it was kind of refreshing, right? And let me forget about Megalopolis. But yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That was good.
And a film that almost begs to be seen in the theater with great sound, because there's so much, like, it just kind of pulls you in. Yep. Just because there's so much, like, you have to kind of you almost find yourself leaning into the screen to listen to everything that's going on. It's such an amazing piece. And again, like, how does like someone like Coppola
Yeah. Well, in Murch, I mean, Walter Murch, the editor on that film, Walter Murch is brilliant, right? And has written about his thinking of audio editing and also like the film editing aspect of it too. But I mean, to see that, to understand like how much kind of meticulous care went into the sound design of that movie, is pretty incredible. Yeah. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Oh, no, I think that was it. I mean, aside from Coppola, like I feel like the money strain for Coppola was always an issue. And then, from there, it just really just starts to drive. Like, I think maybe there's a mentality shift when you start doing things for hire, like things like Jack, and you start to lose your artistic desire to a certain extent when you can just can just churn out fluff, nonsense, and still get paid for it. And again, who cares, right? I mean, you do some of your run from Apocalypse Now to whatever is probably one of the best ones in filmmaking history. So, like, maybe doff your hat to the fact that you got any of the films made at all, and then the fact that you made some of the greatest films of all time. Then, kudos to you.
Yeah.
Well, who am I to say?
Right. Megalopolis is not one of those, though.
It certainly is not. So my best first viewing this year was Black Type Killers. I had not seen that before. I get to see it on the big screen. Radiance did a Blu-ray 4K release of it. Such a fun like Japanese stylish scene. It was like 60s noir, female assassin gang. So very cool. So much fun. But that's probably my best first watch of this year. So
nice. I was really trying to, there's a lot of stuff that I saw for the first time, but I saw at home, right? On Blu-ray or on one of the better streaming outlets. So I was trying to think of what did I see for the first time in theaters, and I came up with The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
It's such a good movie.
It's so good. And so I saw that it was the opening film for the Denton Black Film Festival, and saw that at the Alamo in Denton. And again, nice full theater. It is so much fun. It is so good, and it is so. I mean, fun might be the wrong word, but also like I think it is kind of fun. So, yeah.
It's of all the I know we talk about films a lot and how they're slept on, but like that one to me. We have to show that one at some point.
I think so too. I think so too.
Yeah. It's so important. It's so good, especially with everything that's going on at the moment. Like I love that movie, and I love that the title gives one concern. I love that it makes you feel uncomfortable in a lot of ways. I love that it's not ambiguous what it's trying to do, and right. I don't know. It's a really really great film that like. And also the history behind that movie is so amazing too. I don't know if they talked about it at the screening, but how like the studio completely killed it, so it played for like 2 weeks in theaters and then they completely pulled it. The fact that we still have access to it and still can see it is pretty amazing as well. So like, I don't know. I'm a huge fan of that movie.
Yeah. It was great. It was great. Okay, your top 5 films of the year.
All right, so my top 5 Screamies, going from bottom to top. I'm going to start off with number 5 is Wicked. Okay. I mean, like I thought about like there's other films that I could put here, but I'm going to be honest, man. That I know I've talked about it a little bit on this podcast too, but. I am a sucker for a good musical, and I think this one was really, really well done. I do wish it had been the full story, but I understand why they, for monetary reasons, I understand, and also just for storytelling reasons. And I think Erivo and Grande were unbelievably outstanding in those roles that have been established on Broadway by, really well-established actresses. I don't know. I really, really fell in love with that movie. Number 4 was the previously mentioned Kneecap. I think that was again like it was such a fun time, and I saw it in a theater with one other person. It was that type of thing. It was just like, but just really had a great time with it. Went back and like started listening to Kneecap's discography. I think I would like to see more by them. And I think I would follow that story for a while if they would keep making those movies. One of the films that my number 3 is probably one that should have been on my underrated list, but it was Housekeeping for Beginners. Okay. Yeah. Another movie I don't really understand why, like in any other year, this would have been some sort of like Fox Searchlight pushing really hard for an Oscar push. It gets kind of buried in the beginning of the year. Yeah. But an up and coming filmmaker, and really one that I can't wait for the next things that they're doing. Yeah. And then the number 1 and number 2 are pretty obvious, but like my number 2 is The People's Joker, and of course we talked about that quite a bit. And then my number 1 was Anora. I still think that's probably the best film. Just all completely compartmentalized and encapsulated. Just what I think of a best picture. That was the best picture I saw all year long.
Okay, all right. That's a solid list. Did you have any honorable mentions or any movies that almost made the list? Or
I mean, out of the ones that I like The Substance quite a bit. I'm probably I didn't write down any of the other ones, but I mean, there are a handful that I really, really enjoyed, but I mean, I like Saturday Night. Probably would have made my top 10 list. But outside of that, I think those 5 kind of really like were the ones that I think. Those were.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
All
my
right.
top 5.
So I have a couple honorable mentions that I want to get out of the way first. One is This Closeness, the Kit Zwahara film that I really, really adore and can't wait to see what else she does next. The other one, or another one, is My First Film, which is Zia Anger's movie, which again I think is I just this kind of piece of meta-analysis, kind of self-reflective movie about like making art. I just thought it was really fascinating in the way it was put together. And then I also have on my honorable mentions list The People's Joker. So it didn't quite make my list. And I'm not sure why. Maybe I was trying to because I think we've given it so much fanfare already that I just kind of like put it down there. I also tried to like keep any of the. So Anora did not make my list. The Substance did not make my list because they were Oscar noms. So I tried to stay away from those. Although to be fair, I just took Anora off and put The Beast on after you reminded me of The Beast because I completely forgot about that film. So we'll start number 5. I saw The TV Glow. And again, this is a film we saw at Diff that I was perplexed by, but fully involved in and intrigued by, and really just thought that the 2 leads were fantastic performances. And I just think it was a fascinating movie about sort of nostalgia, but also about sort of finding one's identity in the pop culture that you relate to, right? That you spend so much time with. Number 4, we'll do The Beast. Again, we've talked about that, but just such a interesting, complex, like moving kind of film that I don't know, never lets you really get situated or comfortable in whatever timeline it's involved in. So that was 4, and then 3, Seed of the Sacred Fig, an Iranian film by way of Germany. That again, I mean, deals with these political issues that we don't really know anything about, right? Because we're, I think, kept so much in the dark of what goes on and not just that country, but other countries that we don't want to sort of look at. So that was 3. All right, number 2, All We Imagine Is Light. The Indian film that should have been nominated.
I still haven't seen that one.
It's pretty beautiful. It's a moving, beautiful kind of portrait of these women. Should have been nominated for an Oscar, but India was never going to nominate it because of political issues. But it is 3 great performances, unlike the 3 performances in Emilia Perez. But definitely worth watching. And then I think my number 1 is Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. The Radu Jude film. And I just think this is a fucking trip of a film. It's on one hand a complete satire, and on the other is just a like stick in the eye, right, to so many people who perpetrate this kind of influencer lifestyle, but are also doing it as a hustle, right? Because they have to. And that's the other thing, is that it's not, I don't want to call it like anti-capitalist, but it kind of is, right? It's set not here, but you see this character who is working as like a PA for a film production company, and then has to drive Uber to make ends meet. And like, how many people have to do the same thing? How many of us have to have a side hustle just to pay the bills?
Right.
So, and I can't remember her name, but the lead performance is brilliant. She's just brilliant. So, yeah.
And that's a great list. Going back to kind of how the Oscars are put together, do you think it's somewhat bogus that we have to let countries submit? Like, who the fuck is submitting?
Yes.
Like, why wouldn't we just choose best foreign language films? And I understand that some of them would get lost, but some of them get lost either way. Why are we looking at countries to put up a single film that should be like, why couldn't we have 2 Japanese films or 4 Indian films, or
Right.
like why is there some sort of like, oh well, now we've got to honor the one film that Brazil thinks is the best film of the year, which is
Right.
fine. But I mean,
Right.
like, why wouldn't the studios produce, putting these things out, want to do that? You asked about other films that were on my list.
Yeah.
One that I did pull off my list because it hasn't been in the States, and I think it's getting released here soon, was On Becoming a Guinea Fowl, which I do think, I hope that people seek that out when they, and then I hope they go back and watch her other films. And when you see that, I desperately want to talk about that movie, because I think it's brilliant, but I also think it's very complicated, and I think both of her films are very interesting watches, and I'm dying to talk about them.
Yeah.
But that was one of the ones that I kind of pulled off the list because I had a chance to see it when I was over in Scotland, and it hadn't been released here in the United States.
And that would have been cheating.
I said, go ahead.
I said that would have been cheating.
Sorry. That would have been cheating. And that's the last thing that I want to do here on Why Does Wilhelm Scream, is to cheat you, the listener, with that, oh, Jason saw something over in Europe and you couldn't see it, blah, blah, blah. That's
Wait.
not what I'm about.
Oh, I guess Scotland did decide to stay in the EU, so that counts.
Yes. And so, yeah, I think all of the really, major studio releases, and you go back and again, looking at through the year in this list, specifically just looking for porn titles, there was a lot of
Yes.
terrible shit that was released. There weren't a lot of huge blockbuster type movies, or 3,000 screen or whatever. I don't know what qualifies anymore. Let's say over 1,000
idea.
screen movies that were all that great. I mean, they're, and even the ones that ended up bubbling to the top that got nominated, weren't all that great. I mean, and I know that happens year after year, but a film like Conclave or a film like A Complete Unknown, these just seem so tired geriatric retreads of films. Why do we even care? Even The Brutalist, to a certain extent, which I thought, when I was watching the Oscars, I was like, it's a good thing that Kieran won for A Real Pain, because had Guy Pearce won for The Brutalist, I thought it probably would have signaled a Brutalist sweep. I figured that would have just kind of gone through, and we would just see The Brutalist win everything. But that didn't happen. So
And
it was. What did you think overall? Do you have any thoughts on the broadcast or the telecast, or the awards that ended up winning?
I find these shows typically very boring. And sometimes cringy, and they don't hold my attention very well. So I dipped in and out of it. I wanted to see some of the major awards. I didn't stick around for Brody's acceptance speech.
I was going to ask you if you'd saw it, if you'd seen it.
No,
or not.
and
it was insufferable.
Yeah, that's why that's why I tend not to watch a lot of these award shows. I wonder too, how much longer does an award show like the Oscars stay culturally relevant? At what point does it kind of turn into baseball, where it's there and some people watch it, but it's kind of, do you know what I mean? Right. Is there sort of an expiration date on how much this matters? To the general general populace.
Right, where we start to see where it's 3 million people watch it instead of however many watch, 17 million or whatever it was. And I do think it's got to have diminishing returns, right? Does anybody really care about the Grammys anymore, or
that's what I mean? Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's because I've never followed the Grammys because I was never any. I don't say this to say this the way it sounds, but I'd never followed ridiculously popular music like that. I mean, that's why I never watched MTV Music Awards either. It wasn't there was never a group. There was never really a award show for music that was awarding the type of music that I was listening to. And I get that people. But also, and I think that was part of what I think was part of the Oscars appeal, right? I mean, this was that you'd get these. It wasn't really ever the the highest grossing box office films. You'd get films that you might have missed otherwise, or been introduced to otherwise, because you were only following what the box office numbers or whatever the big releases were. But like now, I think they're going to introduce some sort of like audience populate. I mean, some sort of like entertaining award, or like
and like an ensemble award too, I think, right?
Yeah, so an ensemble award and then like a box office type award. And I'm like, what's the point of that? Like, I mean, like, this is not the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, right? I mean, like, why do we? And what are you saying from one? Look, at the end of the day, probably for the most of these people, it's fine because they're going to win an Oscar, right? I mean, there's going to be some sort of like, but do we give a shit that like Bad Boys Ride or Die wins a audience award for the best,
Yeah, no, we don't. And I mean, I think that's the thing that has always set the Oscars apart from like the Golden Globes or the SAG Awards, was that it kind of took an artistic high road, maybe. Like it didn't, because I think like a box office award is, I think that's just like easy pickings, right? I think that is just a kind of a ploy to the peanut gallery, for lack of better terms, right? Like, I want to see myself represented in the movies that I like. And if you like Bad Boys Ride or Die, that's great. I mean, good for you, but I don't think it necessarily deserves any awards, right? I also think, kind of, going on with my relevance question, it feels like, I mean, movies are becoming less and less relevant in terms of like going out to the theater. And so, like, are those two things, is there a corollary there, right? Is as movies aren't as popular as a form of entertainment and money-making entertainment, do the Oscars do they become diminished, right, because of that as well? Right? Are less people watching the Oscars because less people are going to the movies?
Well, and as much as we, like to tell people to stay in their lane and we don't care what they think, I do think, to a certain extent that like people do look for these political statements, or, these movies, a lot of these movies are made for particular reasons. And like this broadcast in particular had nothing. Like there was no like substance to any, like, here's the thing is what I don't care about. Like, I don't give a shit if you work for CAA. Yeah. I don't give a shit who your lawyer is. Like, either tell me some sort of like something about you that's meaningful. Like, you can thank all those people in an email later or call them on the phone. But like, I mean, like, saying their names out loud on a broadcast, I get it. It might mean something to them. But like to the most people, I don't care who your production assistant is. It doesn't make any, tell me an anecdote about the movie making. Tell me an anecdote about your life, and then go on. Yeah. But like, I don't care. Your laundry list of people to thank that is useless to me. Yeah. Tell me why you made the film, what it means to you, and then piss off, right? I mean, like that's fine. Or tell me something that you want to say, because you have an audience that is actively listening to you, and the one thing you're going to tell me is like, I want to thank my reps at whatever. Yeah. It's like, okay, whatever. Nobody. I mean, like, and I think that's at the end of the day, like, I think that's what like makes this less and less interesting, is that one, if these people have, for Brody to get up there and drone on and on and on and on and say absolutely nothing. And then grandstand and pretend like he's better than it all, and like that because he's won this award once before, can control it was just so insufferable. But do you think so I think a couple of things. One, I mean, I feel like that these productions, these broadcasting of award shows are now becoming like super safe. I mean, I think you saw that, where it was Conan O'Brien working really hard not to offend anyone, and I don't mean like people in the crowd, but I mean like any like right wing media that might be listening, right? Oh, I can't make hints at the current political climate because like then like Disney will be mad at me, and I think that's a little preposterous. And then maybe as much as we think Adrian Brody is kind of a pompous ass, at least he did something different. At least he did something kind of not safe, because everyone else is doing what you're saying right there. The boring.
There's a kind of like running commentary about current NBA players and how they're all super fucking boring and they're like robots when they give interviews and they all say the same thing and they're all just like, yeah, I really love my mom, you know? And it's kind of like what you're saying there is, let's get up there, let's thank all these people that no one cares about, that no one knows, except because it's like inside baseball. Right. So at least Adrian Brody was like, wow, what a dick. What a, what a diva.
No, I'm absolutely with you. That was at least interesting. Right. I mean, I don't, and excuse me. So I don't really buy into the Ricky Gervais azation of these award shows where we're all taking a piss at these celebrities. I don't, and especially from a Gervais perspective, I think it's revolutionary when he does it once, and then when it becomes expected, you're just like, all right, what are we really doing here? Like, I mean, just because I'll say that being a roast comic, for anybody who has salt in the game of being a stand-up comedian at all, it's the easiest fucking thing in the world to do.
Sure.
These jokes write themselves. It's not hard to tear people down. Right. It's not.
That's right.
And
it takes more muscles to smile than it does to frown, Jace. I don't know, or however that goes.
Right. But making a joke at somebody's foibles, making a joke about Mel Gibson being a drunk, which I know it's not topical at the moment, but that's one of the jokes that Gervais made, right?
Topical.
I mean, it's like, that's simple. Making and it's only surprising because you're doing it in front of an audience that, as typically, sterile and doesn't take a lot of barbs because they're rich, right? I mean, so, but taking a pot shot at Scientologists or making a Richard Gere gerbil joke in front of all of these audience. I mean, like, it doesn't, like, it's simple, it's sophomoric, it's not difficult comedy to do, right? And so, like, I don't necessarily agree with that. That's how these things need to go either.
Right.
But I do think, like, we should be encouraging these people to, and I think it's just because, look, by the time we get to the Oscars, all these people have won at least one other award. You've already thanked your agents, your hairstylists, and the people who get your coffee every day. You've already thanked them all. You're on the biggest stage. Say something important. Say something meaningful, or don't say anything at all. Just say thank you and I'm out. I mean, that's. But yeah, I don't know longevity. I mean, they'll drag this out for as long as they possibly can, and then they'll still continue to have these awards because it still, to a certain extent, drives, resumes and physical media and virtual media sales. But yeah, I think this is going to continue to diminish, and I do think if they start to water it down like they're planning on doing, with adding more awards. And then diminishing the ones that, like, people don't really even understand at the moment anyway, like sound design and sound editing. Like, people don't understand, unless you're in the industry, you don't understand necessarily what the difference between those two things are.
Right.
Which is, I'm not to say that both of those things shouldn't get an award, but I mean, like, but
you're talking about like the nuanced parts that go into making a film and that go into making a good film, right? And how people just like skip over those. So
right. So yeah, making this more like the MTV Movie Awards is not going to help out the Oscars at all. If we start seeing awards, the Oscar for Best Kiss goes to, what the Oscars should be looking at, right, is how to award films that they don't typically award, right? How to award films like horror or or comedy, things that they've typically not been in touch with. Like, how do we expand and recognize those types of movies if you're not going to recognize them in this sort of dramatic categories. But yeah, giving a box office award to Into the Spider-Verse, or if you're looking at the top 5 box office winners and trying to give an award between those 5, who fucking cares?
And that's such a cheap award too. I mean, it's just,
what does it even mean?
It's just pandering at that point. I mean, it really is just pandering. I think to those types of movies and then to the fans of those types of movies. And look, I don't mean to denigrate the fans of those movies, right? But
No, it's fine. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, but you're also those people don't care if it's won. I mean, like, those people already saw that movie 3 times. They don't
Right.
care if it won an Oscar for.
Right.
Like,
right.
if you're seeing Bad Boy Ride or Die multiple times in the theater, you're not seeing it because this is an Academy Award winning performance by Martin Lawrence. I mean, because he already should have won for Big Mama's House 2. We all know that.
Absolutely. And I'm sure he won several Emmys for Martin anyway. Right? Yeah, but I mean, I like this idea of like somehow opening up the award show to include some of these other types of films that get overlooked, right? I mean, especially now when you think of, and I know that like we kind of, this phrase is like passé, but that idea of elevated horror, that is as good as anything else being made that just continues to get passed over. And if you're not going to like open up your minds to include those, Academy voters, then open up a category, because that's more legit than being like, okay, Blockbuster Award or Best Ensemble or,
Right.
Viewer's Choice.
And instead of having 10 for Best Picture, then just call it, and again, I guess you have to have like some sort of best to close out the night.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could pare back on like sound design or sound editing, or, you could pare back on some of the technical awards and just focus on, the films themselves.
So you don't care
understand-
about, you don't care about the technicians. You don't care about the craft people. You don't care about the people behind the scenes.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yes,
No, I just wanted to be clear. I just wanted to be clear.
And more to the point, the American people don't care about those people.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Okay, because I guarantee you that I couldn't tell you who won sound design this year, let alone years in the past.
What's your favorite Roger Deakins movie, Jason?
All of them. I celebrate his entire filmography. So, yeah, I'm just look, and I'm not even saying like I would still keep cinematography. Those are things that people look. You want to do best sound? That's fine.
I got you.
I mean,
so you're
like,
saying combine those categories,
or give them, yes,
Yeah.
give us a sound cinematography. Like, can we get rid of the documentary shorts and animated shorts?
Yeah,
probably.
What do you think? Do we need to keep both best original and adapted screenplay, or can you just do best screenplay?
Yeah, we could just say yes, best screenplay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't care if it was written as a book beforehand. I don't.
I'm with that. I'm good with that. I've always had trouble figuring that out anyway.
But yeah, so if we were to get rid of one of those categories to do a best best movie in the field of comedy / musicals, and then a best film in the film of in the genre of horror. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think how excited people actually would be, like how many people you would get new to watch if there was a best horror category. Yeah. Or a best comedy, but specifically a best horror category.
I think it'd be really interesting.
It's like it would be like adding hip hop and heavy metal to the Grammys,
yeah.
right?
Right.
Things that should have been there all not all along, because those genres didn't exist all along. But I mean, like as soon as they became prevalent and relevant, you absolutely should have entered them, have them there.
Yeah, I think the hip hop is the right analog for that too. I was thinking about that, like when they added that to the Grammys. Because they weren't putting it in, the other categories. They weren't going to call it best rock, right? The only time they're not going to call something rock, right, is that. Right? Everything else is sure, but sorry, black guys, you don't qualify for for rock. So, yeah,
just Fishbone.
Right. Yeah, but they didn't sound black. So I'm kidding.
So yeah, if members of the Academy want us to, if they want to reach out and have us help revamp the award ceremony, please you know how to get a hold of us at whydoesthewilhelmscream.com.
That's right.
I'm more than happy to consult. And my fee's probably pretty cheap comparatively speaking. So
yeah, and you can call me at
1-800 go
1-800 go yourself.
So we need to do that more often. We need to add way more beeps into our podcasting.
Okay. Anything else, Jason? Anything
No, I think
else
this has been a good
to
wrap
up
of the second annual Screamies.
Second annual Screamies, and this is now the official end of the 2024 movie season. You are very welcome, listener, for this episode full of insight into last year's movies. I hope you go and seek out all of these films and then some. Jason, if there's nothing else to add, I just want to tell everyone that, until next time, thank you all for listening.
And keep screaming.
The jury tackle him a rut Marvy Lamb White Uggams and you we hiss la fox so a stroll a drew and full so well 4-digit code what do you know it's Macara I'm gonna be spending my dough tonight 2 pints at a time strolling about like Dolomite but home for a shake they're deuce that you mark one push my narrow back or be it while you strapping you from ugly pop and then we both jump down and do your class handstand like a man's man can Foxland listen to plan of the Uggin and Visha Mark a G-Show I'm on the upside of the seesaw all the thunder and this magic and if there's a better way to live I gotta have it because I think all day but when I drink I'm okay gets further away every time I try grab it underneath all the chatter in this heaven got a little peak when the rain made me feel like
You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at realhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time,